My name is Vex Prime, and I've been monitoring species across 17 galaxies for the past 3 millennia. I've seen civilizations rise and fall, witnessed the birth of stars and the death of entire worlds. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for the species known as humans. The first time I encountered their data files, I nearly deleted them as corrupted information. Surely no intelligent species could be this contradictory. But here I am, 3 years later, filing the most bizarre war report in Galactic Council history. And the most humiliating part, these humans won a war they didn't even know they were fighting. Let me explain how this catastrophe unfolded. It started when the Zorvak Empire decided Earth would make an excellent addition to their collection of conquered worlds. The Zorvaks are, or rather were, a technologically advanced species with a simple philosophy: might makes right, and everyone else makes great slaves. They'd conquered 47 star systems using the same tried and true method. First, they'd study the target species for weaknesses. Second, they'd infiltrate their communication networks. Third, they'd launch a coordinated psychological warfare campaign to break their spirit. Finally, they'd arrive with their fleet to collect the broken remains of whatever civilization they'd chosen to destroy. Commander Thex 9, leader of the Zorvak invasion force, was particularly excited about Earth. His preliminary scans showed a species that seemed almost designed for defeat. Humans were divided into hundreds of different nations, constantly fighting among themselves. They possessed nuclear weapons but had somehow avoided destroying themselves. They had the technology for space travel but barely used it. Perfect victims. "This will be our easiest conquest yet," Thex 9 announced to his officers during their strategy meeting. "These humans can't even agree on what temperature to keep their planet at. They're arguing about whether their climate is changing while simultaneously causing it to change. They're practically defeating themselves." The first phase began with infiltration. Zorvak operatives, masters of disguise, began appearing in human societies. They expected to find primitive communications systems they could easily manipulate. Instead, they discovered something called the Internet. Agent Click 7 sent his first report: "Commander, I've successfully infiltrated their primary communication network. However, I must report some unexpected findings. The humans appear to be conducting psychological warfare against themselves. They're spreading false information, creating elaborate hoaxes, and engaging in what they call trolling with a sophistication that rivals our own propaganda division." Thex 9 wasn't concerned. "Excellent. Their internal conflicts will make our job easier. Begin Phase 2. Phase 2 involved spreading fear and paranoia through their media networks. The Zorvaks started by creating fake news stories about alien invasions, government conspiracies, and impending doom. They sat back and waited for the humans to descend into panic. Instead, something bizarre happened. The humans read these stories and then made jokes about them. They created something called memes. They turned the Zorvak propaganda into entertainment. Agent Moore 12 reported from his position inside a human media corporation: "Commander, they've taken our carefully crafted fear campaign about reptilian aliens controlling their governments, and they're laughing at it. They've created cartoon images. One human even made a song about it. It has millions of views." "Impossible," Thex 9 replied. "No species laughs at existential threats. Continue the campaign." But the humans did laugh. They laughed at everything. They took the most terrifying concepts the Zorvaks could imagine and turned them into comedy. Alien invasion. They made movies about it where the aliens were bumbling idiots. Government conspiracies. They created television shows mocking the very idea. Impending doom. They made apocalypse survival into a game. Dr. Maya Hoffman, a human psychologist who had no idea she was being studied by aliens, published a paper that would have saved the Zorvaks considerable trouble if they'd bothered to read it. Humans, she wrote, have evolved humor as a coping mechanism for stress. The more threatening something appears, the more likely we are to make jokes about it. It's not denial, it's adaptation. The Zorvaks, who had never encountered humor-based psychological defense mechanisms, were completely baffled. Their entire strategy was based on the assumption that fear led to paralysis. They couldn't comprehend a species that responded to fear by laughing at it. HFY decided to escalate to Phase 3, direct psychological attacks. Zorvak mind control specialists began targeting human leaders, attempting to plant thoughts of surrender and submission. The results were unexpected. General Patricia Kane, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, was the first target. The Zorvaks spent weeks carefully infiltrating her thoughts, planting suggestions that resistance was futile and that humanity should surrender to their superior alien overlords. The next day, General Kane held a press conference. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, "I've been having some unusual thoughts lately." Now, I'm not saying it's aliens, but she paused, grinned, and added, "It's probably aliens." The crowd laughed. The reporters laughed. The entire world laughed. Dr. Robert Mills, a neuroscientist who had been studying human consciousness, was the next target. The Zorvaks filled his mind with visions of their superior technology and overwhelming military might. Dr. Mills published a paper titled "Fascinating Patterns in Technologically Advanced Hallucinations, a Case Study in Applied Xenopsychology." He described the Zorvak mental intrusions in perfect detail, analyzed their technological implications, and concluded that they were either evidence of actual alien contact or proof that the human brain is even more creative than we previously imagined. The paper won 3 awards. President Jennifer Walsh was their final target. Surely the leader of the world's most powerful military would crack under Zorvak's psychological pressure. The Zorvaks spent a month flooding her mind with images of destruction, conquest, and the futility of resistance. They showed her their fleet, their weapons, their vast empire built on the bones of conquered worlds. President Walsh called a meeting with her top advisors. "Folks," she said, "I think we might have a problem. Either I'm having the world's most elaborate stress-induced hallucinations, or we're about to get a visit from some very unfriendly neighbors." Her chief of staff, Marcus Thompson, leaned forward. "What kind of unfriendly neighbors are we talking about, Madam President?" "The kind that travel between stars and collect planets like baseball cards," Walsh replied. "The kind that think humanity would look great in chains." There was a moment of silence. Then Secretary of Defense William Park spoke up. "Well, that's inconvenient. Do we have a plan?" Walsh smiled. "We're going to do what humans do best when faced with impossible odds." "Which is?" "We're going to improvise, adapt, and overcome. And probably make some terrible jokes along the way." The Zorvaks, monitoring this conversation, were convinced that the humans were finally taking their threat seriously. They prepared for the inevitable surrender. Instead, the humans began preparing for war. But not the kind of war the Zorvaks expected. The humans had studied the patterns in their psychological attacks and reverse-engineered Zorvak technology. They'd figured out how to detect Zorvak infiltrators. They'd even identified the location of the Zorvak fleet, all without ever officially acknowledging that aliens existed. The human military began what they called Operation Cosmic Cleanup. Officially, it was a training exercise for hypothetical extraterrestrial threats. Unofficially, it was preparation for the most asymmetric warfare in galactic history. Commander HFY, growing desperate, decided to abandon psychological warfare and proceed directly to invasion. His fleet of 200 ships approached Earth's solar system, confident that their superior technology would easily overwhelm human defenses. They were about to learn why humans had survived as a species, despite their apparent tendency toward self-destruction. The first sign something was wrong came when Zorvak long-range sensors detected an unusual amount of debris in Earth's orbital space. Not battle debris, but garbage. Thousands of pieces of defunct satellites, discarded rocket stages, and various bits of technological refuse. "Typical," HFY muttered. "These primitive creatures have even polluted their own space." The second sign came when they tried to establish communication with Earth's governments. Instead of the terrified pleas for mercy they expected, they received a single message broadcast on all frequencies. "Welcome to Earth. We've been expecting you. Please hold while we transfer your call to the appropriate department." Then came elevator music. The third sign was the most disturbing. As the Zorvak fleet approached Earth, they began detecting what appeared to be human spacecraft. Thousands of them, all moving in seemingly random patterns throughout the solar system. "Impossible," Thex 9 declared. "Our intelligence reports showed they barely had a space program." His tactical officer, Sub-Commander Plex 4, was studying the sensor readings with growing alarm. "Sir, these don't appear to be military vessels. They're civilian ships, cargo haulers, passenger transports, even what appears to be recreational vehicles." "Civilian ships. Are they evacuating?" "No, sir. They're everywhere. And they're all armed." This was the moment Thex 9 realized he might have made a mistake. A civilization that turned its entire civilian population into a space-based militia wasn't primitive. It was terrifying. What the Zorvaks had interpreted as humanity's weakness, their tendency toward individual initiative and distrust of authority, was actually their greatest strength. When faced with an external threat, every human became a potential soldier, every civilian vessel became a warship, and every crazy idea became a potential weapon. The human strategy was simple: if you can't outgun them, confuse them. If you can't outrun them, overwhelm them. If you can't defeat them conventionally, make them question their life choices. As the Zorvak fleet entered Earth's outer defense perimeter, they encountered the first wave of human defenders. A ragtag collection of converted cargo ships, civilian transports, and what appeared to be armed garbage trucks. "Sir," reported Plex 4, "the lead human vessel is hailing us." "Put them through," Thex 9 ordered, expecting to hear desperate pleas for mercy. Instead, he heard, "This is Captain Tony Rodriguez of the converted freighter Murphy's Law. You guys picked the wrong planet to mess with. We've got a special delivery for you, courtesy of the human race." Before Thex 9 could respond, the human ships opened fire. Not with conventional weapons, but with the most diverse arsenal the Zorvaks had ever encountered. These kinetic projectiles, energy weapons, chemical explosives, and things that didn't appear in any tactical manual. One ship fired what appeared to be kitchen appliances. Another launched a barrage of defunct satellites. A third somehow weaponized their waste disposal system. The Zorvaks, trained for conventional warfare, had no idea how to respond to an enemy that used garbage as ammunition and treated battle like an elaborate practical joke. Sir, Plex 4 reported with barely concealed panic. "One of the human ships just fired. I think it's a toilet." "A what?" "A toilet, sir. It's armed with some kind of explosive device." The porcelain projectile struck a Zorvak destroyer, detonating with enough force to disable its shields. The humans had somehow turned bathroom fixtures into weapons of war. But the real shock came when Thex 9 realized this wasn't random chaos. The humans were using their apparent randomness as a tactical advantage. The Zorvak battle computers, designed to predict and counter conventional military strategies, couldn't process the sheer unpredictability of human warfare. Every time the Zorvaks adapted to one human tactic, the humans would switch to something completely different. The conventional weapons gave way to improvised explosives. Military formations dissolved into guerrilla swarms. Serious battle communications were replaced with constant jokes and taunts. "This is impossible," Thex 9 muttered as he watched his tactical displays fill with more human contacts than his computers could process. "No species fights like this." His communications officer, Yex 2, looked up from her station. "Sir, the humans are broadcasting on all frequencies again." "What now?" They're making jokes about us. They're calling us the galaxy's worst houseguests and suggesting we phone home because nobody wants us here." Thex-9 stared at the tactical display, watching his superior fleet being systematically dismantled by a species that treated warfare like a comedy show. And the worst part, the humans were winning. The battle for Earth's solar system continued for 6 hours. 6 hours that redefined everything the Galactic Council thought they knew about warfare, strategy, and the fundamental nature of intelligent life. Thex-9 watched his fleet of 200 advanced warships being systematically destroyed by what appeared to be a combination of military vessels, civilian transports, and flying junk yards. The humans had somehow turned the entire solar system into a weapon. "Status report," he demanded, though he wasn't sure he wanted to hear the answer. "Sir, we've lost 37 ships," Plex 4 reported. "The humans are using our own debris as projectiles. They're also, sir, they're ramming us with asteroids." "Asteroids?" "They've attached engines to space rocks and are piloting them directly into our formations. The pilot of one asteroid just radioed us to say, and I quote, 'Special delivery from the asteroid belt, signed with love from humanity.'" Thex-9 rubbed his temples. In 3,000 years of military service, he'd never encountered anything like this. The humans weren't just fighting, they were having fun while they fought. Their battle communications were filled with laughter, jokes, and what appeared to be cooking recipes. "Sir," Yex-2 interrupted, "we're receiving another transmission from the human fleet." "Put it through." This time the voice belonged to a woman. "This is Admiral Sarah Mitchell of the Earth Defense Force. We've been monitoring your communications and we have a proposition for you." Finally, Thex-9 muttered, "They're ready to surrender." "We're prepared to accept your unconditional surrender," Admiral Mitchell continued. "In exchange, we'll provide you with safe passage out of our solar system, a complimentary care package of Earth snacks, and a helpful pamphlet titled 'So You've Been Defeated by Humans, A Guide to Accepting Reality.'" The Zorvac command bridge fell silent. The humans were offering them surrender terms. "This is Commander Thex-9 of the Zorvac Imperial Fleet," he replied, struggling to maintain his dignity. "We do not surrender to primitive species." "Oh, we're not primitive," Admiral Mitchell laughed. "We're just really, really good at improvising. For instance, we've just figured out how to turn your own shield frequency against you. Captain Rodriguez, if you would." Suddenly, every Zorvac ship in the fleet found their shields failing simultaneously. The humans had somehow reverse-engineered Zorvac technology in the middle of a battle and used it to create a system-wide shield disruptor. "How is this possible?" Thex-9 demanded. "Easy," Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled over the comm. "We've got about 50,000 engineers scattered across this solar system, and they're all really bored. Give a human engineer a problem in 6 hours, and they'll either solve it or accidentally create something even more dangerous while trying." As if to prove his point, one of the human ships suddenly fired what appeared to be a concentrated beam of pure energy that sliced through a Zorvac cruiser like it was made of paper. "What was that?" Plex 4 asked. "According to our sensors," Yex-2 replied, "they somehow weaponized a microwave oven." The humans had done more than just defend themselves. They'd taken every piece of Zorvac technology they could scan, reverse-engineered it, improved it, and turned it into something completely unexpected. Their weapons weren't just effective, they were creative. One human ship was firing modified mining lasers. Another had weaponized their waste recycling system to create kinetic projectiles. A third had somehow turned their life support system into a chemical weapon dispenser. "Sir," Plex 4 reported, "we're detecting massive energy signatures from the third planet. It appears the humans have activated some kind of planetary defense system. Impossible. Our intelligence showed they had no such technology." "Sir, I think they just built it." Through the view screen, Thex-9 watched as Earth's surface lit up with thousands of launch sites. It's not military installations, but converted civilian infrastructure. Airports, shipping ports, even sports stadiums had been turned into launch platforms. "They're launching everything," Yex-2 whispered. "Commercial satellites, weather monitoring equipment, telecommunications arrays. They've turned their entire civilian space program into a weapons platform. The orbital bombardment that followed wasn't precise military strikes. It was a chaotic barrage of everything humans could possibly launch into space. Defunct satellites became kinetic weapons. Communication arrays became electronic warfare platforms. Even their space junk became part of the attack. Sir, Plex 4's voice was barely audible. They're launching their garbage at us. Their what? Their garbage, sir. Space debris, defunct equipment, and I think that's a refrigerator. The appliance in question struck a Zorvac frigate with enough force to breach its hull. The humans had somehow calculated the exact trajectory needed to turn household appliances into ship-killing projectiles. But the most disturbing thing wasn't the weapons. It was the communications. "Hey Zorvac fleet," came a cheerful voice over the comm system. "This is the crew of the converted pizza delivery ship, 30 minutes or less. We've got a hot delivery for you, and this time it's free." The ship in question proceeded to launch what appeared to be actual pizza boxes, each one loaded with high explosives. "This is insane," Thex-9 muttered. "No species fights like this." Sir Yex-2 said quietly, "Maybe that's why they're winning." The turning point came when the humans unveiled their most diabolical weapon, their internet. "Attention Zorvac fleet." Admiral Mitchell announced, "We've just uploaded your tactical database to our global information network. Within the next hour, approximately 4 billion humans will have access to your technology, your weaknesses, and your complete military history." They're already making memes about it. The Zorvac command staff exchanged horrified glances. Their entire military strategy, their technology, their weaknesses, all in the hands of a species that treated information warfare like entertainment. Furthermore, Admiral Mitchell continued, "We've started a crowdsourcing project. Every human with access to the internet can now contribute ideas for how to defeat you. Current suggestions include using your own weapons against you, turning your ships into art installations, and something called yeeting you into the sun." "What does yeeting mean?" Thex-9 asked. Sir Yex-2 replied after consulting her translation database, "It appears to be a human term for forcefully throwing something with great enthusiasm." "They want to throw us into their star." "With great enthusiasm, sir." The next wave of human attacks proved that crowdsourcing military strategy was surprisingly effective. The humans had collectively analyzed Zorvac tactics, identified patterns, and developed counters for every possible move the fleet could make. But they hadn't just countered Zorvac strategies. They'd made them into jokes. Sir, Plex 4 reported, "The humans have created what they call memes about our attack formations. They're comparing our tactical maneuvers to something called a dance nobody wanted to see. And our weapons. They're calling them fancy light shows and the galaxy's most expensive fireworks display." The humans had done something no other species had ever accomplished. They'd made the Zorvac Empire look ridiculous. Not just defeated, but laughably incompetent. Sir Yex-2 interrupted, "We're receiving a priority transmission from the Galactic Council." "Put it through." The hologram that appeared showed Council Prime Zeta Alpha, the highest authority in the galaxy. "Commander Thex-9, what is your status?" "Council Prime, we are encountering unexpected resistance." "Unexpected resistance?" "Our monitoring stations show that you're being defeated by a species that just learned about interstellar travel." "Sir, these humans are not what our intelligence suggested. They're using unconventional tactics." "Unconventional how?" "They're treating warfare like a game, sir. They're laughing while they fight us. They've turned their entire civilian population into combatants. And they're winning." There was a long pause. Then Council Prime Zeta Alpha spoke again. "Commander, are you telling me that the mighty Zorvac Empire is being defeated by a species that finds war amusing?" "Sir, they've just launched a spacecraft that appears to be shaped like a giant middle finger. It's heading directly for my flagship." "A what?" "A middle finger, sir. According to our cultural database, it's a human gesture indicating extreme displeasure. The spacecraft in question, piloted by someone calling themselves Captain Chaos, proceeded to ram directly into the Zorvak flagship's bridge, causing massive structural damage and forcing the crew to evacuate to secondary command. "This is Captain Chaos to all Zorvak ships," came the pilot's voice over the comm. "That was for thinking you could invade our planet. Next time, maybe try calling first." The pilot had sacrificed his ship and his life to make a point. Not a tactical point, but a symbolic one. The humans weren't just defending their planet, they were defending their right to be ridiculous. "Sir," Plex 4 said quietly, "we've lost 80% of our fleet." The humans are offering surrender terms again. What are they offering? Safe passage out of the solar system, a formal apology to the Galactic Council, and they want us to appear on something called a talk show to discuss our invasion experience. They want us to be interviewed. They want to ask us questions about our defeat for entertainment purposes, sir. Thix-9 stared at the tactical display. His mighty fleet reduced to 40 ships, facing an enemy that wanted to turn his humiliation into a television program. Sir, Yex-2 added, "They're also offering therapy. They say defeating invading aliens might be traumatic for us, and they have counselors standing by. They're offering us therapy? They're concerned about our mental health, sir." This was the moment Thix-9 realized that the humans hadn't just won. They'd won so decisively that they felt sorry for their enemies. "Open a channel to Admiral Mitchell," he ordered. "This is Admiral Mitchell. Ready to discuss terms, Commander?" We accept your surrender terms." "Excellent. Here's what's going to happen. Your remaining ships will power down all weapons and follow our escort vessels to a safe distance from Earth. We'll provide you with repair materials, food and medical assistance. In exchange, you'll participate in a formal ceremony where you officially apologize for the invasion attempt. And the interview? Optional but encouraged. The human population is very curious about your culture. They want to understand why you thought invading Earth was a good idea. And if we refuse, then you'll miss out on the care packages. They include chocolate, coffee and something called pizza. Trust me, you don't want to miss the pizza." 3 hours later, the surviving Zorvak fleet found themselves in the unprecedented position of being defeated enemies receiving humanitarian aid from their victims. The humans had not only won the battle but had somehow turned their victory into an opportunity for cultural exchange. "This is impossible," Thix-9 muttered as he watched human ships delivering food and medical supplies to his damaged fleet. "Sir," Plex 4 said, "I've been analyzing the human tactical data. They never had a formal military strategy. They just adapted in real time." "What do you mean?" "Every decision was made by individual commanders responding to immediate situations. They had no centralized command structure, no predetermined battle plan. They just kept trying new things until something worked." "And it worked?" "It worked perfectly, sir. They turned our greatest strength, our predictability, into our greatest weakness." The formal surrender ceremony took place on a converted space station that the humans had built specifically for the occasion. Commander Thix-9, wearing his dress uniform and what remained of his dignity, stood before a gathering of human representatives. On behalf of the Zorvak Empire, he began, "I formally apologize for our attempted invasion of your world. We underestimated your capabilities." Admiral Mitchell stepped forward. "Apology accepted, Commander. We hope this can be the beginning of a more positive relationship between our species." "You're not going to execute us." "Execute you." "Commander, we don't execute defeated enemies. We invite them to barbecues." "To what?" "What?" "As barbecues. Social gatherings where we cook food and tell stories. You're invited to stay for dinner." And that's how the Zorvak Empire, once the terror of 47 star systems, found themselves attending a human barbecue in the asteroid belt, eating something called hamburgers and listening to humans tell jokes about the invasion they'd just survived. The final insult came when the humans presented each Zorvak officer with a commemorative t-shirt reading, "I tried to invade Earth, and all I got was this lousy t-shirt." They wore them with resignation. 6 months later, I filed my report with the Galactic Council. The humans had not only defeated the Zorvak Empire but had somehow turned them into trading partners. The Zorvaks were now providing advanced technology in exchange for human entertainment, food, and something called customer service training. The war that was supposed to end human civilization had instead introduced the galaxy to pizza, internet memes, and the revolutionary concept of treating your enemies like people who just made bad choices. And the humans still didn't officially acknowledge that aliens existed. As far as their government was concerned, the whole thing had been a training exercise with very realistic special effects. That's humanity for you. They'll win an interstellar war, make friends with their enemies, and then pretend the whole thing never happened because it might cause a panic. Some species conquer through strength, the others through cunning. Humans conquer through the sheer audacity of treating the impossible like it's just another Tuesday. And that's how humanity won a war they didn't even know they were fighting.